All right, Nick, let's talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide. Another, clincher there. A really tough game against, let's say, admittedly, a very tough South Carolina team. Played a lot of teams very, very close this year. But there was something that happened last week that kind of spilled over into this week. And we're here today to tell you exactly why it was good how Alabama handled it. I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, something that happened last week was obviously what happened at the end of the Vanderbilt game with safety Malachi Moore, one of the team captains, probably one of the best players on this Alabama squad. He got a little frustrated, did some things he probably should not have done. And people immediately, I think, lashed out and really called for him to be benched, called for him to be disciplined in some way. People were not happy. Admittedly so, he did something that, wasn't really ethically good on the football field. He didn't do anything. He didn't punch someone in the face, but kicking the ball, being, like getting upset at the end of the game, not great. But I think Coach DeBoer handled it well. I think Malachi Moore, handled it well on his end. And now we see the effects of that. Let's get into this article and we can talk about it more on the other side. This is from the Yard Barker. It says Alabama was on upset watch again on Saturday, barely holding on for a 27-25 win over South Carolina. After taking the 27-19 lead with less than 2 minutes to play in the fourth quarter, Alabama allowed South Carolina to drive down for the field for a touchdown. They had to make a stop on a 2-point conversion that let the Gamecocks recover an onside kick and they had to make one more defensive stand. The Crimson Tide made it with an interception from Dominic Jackson, but it was the awareness of fellow defensive back Malachi Moore that may have actually saved the game, because Jackson caught the ball in the field of play and ran into the end zone. Had he taken a knee, there's a chance it would have been ruled a safety and potentially tied the game. Moore knew that and clearly told his teammate to run it out just before he put his knee down on the ground. It is possible that officials could have ruled that Jackson's momentum had carried him in, but he clearly took a few steps before going into the end zone. It was better not to risk it, and Moore had the awareness to know that. He did not actually make the game-saving play, but still he may have helped save the game. That's incredible heads-up play by Malachi Moore. I think, we were saying, this is one of the smarter moves we have seen in all of college football lately. So I think it goes to show Malachi Moore's probably a pretty important guy to this team. I think he's, everyone has bad days. Everyone does some things that they regret, but this kind of stuff, this is why he needed to play. This is why he deserves to play. Nick, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, but before we get to you, Alabama fans, in the comment section below, tough game, really tight, but let us know, you're able to get the job done. Who is your MVP of this game? Is it Malachi Moore? Is there somebody else you think had a really nice day? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. But Nick, what do you think about this move by Moore?
So it was a really smart move by Moore, obviously. Love that awareness on the football field. Situational football, great stuff there. But how about Kalen DeBoer? Let's give credit where credit is due. And look, he's taken a lot of criticism, rightly so, right? You lose to Vanderbilt the way they did, of course. It's the criticism is going to come, and it's going to come in waves, and it should, right? That's just the way it works. And the Malachi Moore antics at the end of the game did not look good at all. It had the earmarks of a program that was maybe teetering. You go from the hyper disciplinarian of Saban now to DeBoer, and everyone's like, okay, are we seeing Alabama crumble? And a lot of pressure was put on DeBoer and his coaching staff to bench and discipline Malachi Moore. There were shouts from on high. The pundits, everyone and their grandmother said Malachi Moore needs to be benched. This immaturity, this wouldn't happen under a Nick Saban program. You'd hear all that kind of stuff. And Kalen DeBoer made the smart move, right? I guarantee you, he had a one-on-one conversation with Malachi Moore. They had a discussion. He's a grown-up. He's been there before. Moore went on to actually reach out to some Vanderbilt players. I believe the quarterback, maybe another player too, and apologize privately. And everything got squared out without Kalen DeBoer benching Malachi Moore, without him taking off the field one of his best players. And then DeBoer in Alabama is rewarded with probably the smartest play I've seen in college football in many years, right? This is great player management by Kalen DeBoer, and this is exactly Probably the number one reason why you brought him down to Tuscaloosa, down to the Tide. We know his offensive strategy. We know the success he's had as a head coach, but he's the guy that's about player development and player management. What he was able to do at Washington, which is a good program historically, but the reality is he took a lot of 2 and 3 star recruits and put them in situations to be successful and turn that program into a team that could go to a national title game. The thought was taking him down to Tuscaloosa so he can take 4 and 5 star recruits and have a similar, if not better, effect. And one of the ways you have to be able to do that is managing players, allowing them to grow, allowing them to learn, and not burying them in the dirt every time they make a mistake. I love Kalen DeBoer's decision. Obviously, there was some discussion he had with Malachi Moore after the defeat last week, but he didn't bench him. Right. He didn't do the thing every media talking head said he needed to do. If he didn't do that, then he was a failure. Then Nick Saban's disciplinarian was gone forever and this program was going to collapse. He didn't listen to the noise. He didn't listen to the garbage. He said, I'm going to trust my guys. I'm going to manage my guys, and I'm going to put them in positions to correct themselves and be successful. And that's exactly what happened in the Crimson Tide got a W. And look, I know it was a little close for comfort, obviously, but the reality is we're in a different SEC world, different college football world. With the transfer portal, things like that, NIL, there's going to be a lot of close games. The era of beating bad teams by 50 points isn't going to keep happening. I mean, Tennessee got dominated for 3 quarters by Florida yesterday, right? Mississippi State put 31 up on Georgia. This is a new world, a new paradigm we're in college football. Games are going to be a lot closer, and that means your coaching staff is going to have to really hone in on developing and managing players to plot those close games, and Kalen DeBoer got it done with how he handled Malachi Moore.
Yeah, Nick, and really quick, I just want to go over exactly. I mean, at the end of the game, Malachi Moore, let's go back to the Vanderbilt game. He made some dumb penalties, but he didn't do anything crazy. This isn't like a disciplinary thing like we see happening at Georgia, where players are constantly getting arrested. You know, there's so many off the field incidents. This is a guy that's on a talented program. He's a hyper competitive athlete. He's a type A guy, and they lose a game to a team they definitely shouldn't have lost to, and he gets upset. You know, and there's another article, and it talks about how after the game, he reached out to Diego Pavia and he apologized to him. He told him he was sorry for what he did, and he just, you know, he got the best of him. The moment got the best of him. And that happens to everybody. So, again, I like what you said. It hats off to Kalen DeBoer for coming out here and just realizing, hey, let's take this situation. Let's, you know, have a talk about it. Let's go over it, make sure it doesn't happen again. But this is something that happens in, you know, the machismo of football with these guys on the field. You know, no one wants to lose, especially if you're at Alabama. This is a team with a history of winning. You don't want to lose to Vanderbilt. You're going to get a little upset. If I'm the coach, honestly, deep down, I'm probably a little bit happy that this guy's that mad about losing. You want that guy on your team, and obviously it shows. Having him on the field for South Carolina probably, you never know what would have happened, but it probably would have ended up saving the game. If he was not out there, you never know what could have happened. So hats off to DeBoer, like you said, how he handled it. He knew what was going on. It just shows you can't take everything at face value. There's probably a little bit more to the story than you know.
And one final point to end on, you brought up the antics going on at Georgia and the actual criminal offenses. I don't know if your Alabama fans are aware of it. I highly recommend you Google search, whatever, Kirby Smart's antics against Mississippi State. You talk about 2 different programs, right? You talk about Kirby Smart has now, literally, you can see the video. He goes after a Mississippi State quarterback on the sideline. Now he's now saying it's unintentional, it just happened. But that's a difference, right? You've got Malachi Moore, a kid, a college athlete, a whatever, 21-year-old kid, getting emotional at the end of a defeat. And here you've got a 50-plus-year-old man getting emotional during a game, shoving an opponent on the sideline for Georgia, right? 2 different dynamics. So when you talk about managing a program, you look at Georgia, they've got their off-the-field issues. Now we're seeing Kirby Smart do crazy stuff, right? Georgia has issues as a program. A lot of people are critical of Georgia, but the criticism wasn't nearly as loud as we heard from this Alabama program after this Vanderbilt defeat last week. Going forward, I think it's pretty clear now that what Kalen DeBoer has done in Tuscaloosa is setting this team up for continued success long term. We'll have to see how it all shakes out, but I tell you what, today I'd rather be Alabama than Georgia.